Hey guys, Chaps here, and you probably saw this one coming. Let's discuss Operation 6. In the background here, you'll see some gameplay from the new Versus event, Control, and later I'll put up some stuff from the new PvE event, Escape from Kadar. We'll hit more on those modes later. Oh, and please excuse this pathetic level of gameplay. This was literally my first match, and I haven't actually been playing Gears for quite a while now. So I was gonna break down this conversation into 4 categories. First, the changes to the way operations were handled, then about how TC dealt with the operations announcements. The main topic people were probably interested in would be the operations content itself, so I would obviously give some thoughts there, and then I'd wrap it up by looking at the concept of more content more often, and how realistic that actually is. But you know what? No point in beating a dead horse, right? TC knows they messed up with the announcements, right? If you want a video on that, let me know and I'll throw something together, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to leave that out. Let's focus on the actual content of the tour. With that said, I did want to take a minute though to discuss the way the operations are now being handled. Basically, it's just what I predicted last month. They're shortening up the content cycle and we'll get smaller drops every 1 to 2 months. I guess the main difference between what I predicted and what they're doing is that the Coalition is actually sticking with the whole operations concept. I assumed that they would drop this in order to reduce the need to theme the operation, make key art, and help people understand that this is a big change that's happening. But nope, I guess they're sticking with it, though it does seem kind of pointless being that Operation 6 doesn't even have a title. And it doesn't even really have a theme. Occasionally it seems like there might be one, but every other teaser seems to change what that theme is. Speaking of teasers, we also don't have the cool hand-drawn key art this time. It's just another in-game render. I guess all of that's fine, but it kind of begs the question of, is it even worth categorizing these as operations anymore? Let's just call it what it is. It's a map drop with a ranked reset, tour of duty reset, and a store reset. Oh, and I guess they fixed some bugs? Other than that, nothing has changed. I really feel like they should call it a new season or something, ditch this whole operation stigma. Anyways, enough of that. We'll cycle back to the operation format a bit later. Let's talk about this content. 3 characters and 1 ported map. That's basically it. Yeah, okay, we have a couple of special events, but that's kind of something people were expecting throughout the operation, right? It's not like, oh my god, new operation, new event. No, events were basically a weekly thing, or I guess they were supposed to be. So honestly, using special events to pad out the operation announcements was pretty lame. To be fair on the community team though, they're kind of in a tough position. We know most of the studio isn't working on Gears 5 anymore, most of them are working on future projects, and Gears 5 is nearing the end of its life cycle. For anyone who's been following Gears for a while, or even if you watch these videos, you know that they're basically in a minimalist mindset now. They'll keep pumping out few maps and store content, but we're not going to be seeing new modes or anything really groundbreaking. And, well, I guess that's sort of the problem. There's not really too much they can do to make things feel really fresh, I guess. Maps and, I guess, special events, that's all they can really do. So while I hate that they needed to use events as filler content for their blog, it's hard to blame them. They at least need to try to make it sound exciting, right? Well, actually, sort of on a side note, do they really need to hype everything up? I don't know, maybe it would have gone over better if they were a bit more open and tempered expectations a bit more. Many fans are expecting these big operation drops and are left disappointed. If TC went a different approach, set expectations lower and more realistically, perhaps people would have taken this operation a bit better. From what I can see, most of the issues people have with this operation are in regards to no new game modes, no new classes, or too little content. Well, we know there's no modes or classes coming, so those were kinda just false hopes. We'll hit on maps here in a minute, but before we dive into the content quantity, let's talk about the content quality. How are things playing out so far? Alright, so I'm just gonna brush over Spire here. Like, we all know the map from Gears 4. It's not really any different this time around. I found it to be an okay-ish map for some modes, but it's pretty low down on the list of maps that I would vote for. So what's new? Well, we have Control. Is it fun? Sure, I guess if you like King of the Hill. That's basically all it is. It feels like King of the Hill, but with larger rings. I've seen some people who love it, and some people who hate it. For those who hate it, I kinda question how many of them were expecting a true new mode, rather than just the event that it is. I'm not sure how much I can really blame these people though, because let's face it, the Coalition made a big deal out of this event and basically treated it as a selling point of the operation. Oh, and some have complained that it's not ranked or that it's only there for 2 weeks. First off, yeah, again, it's an event, not a full mode. Pretty poor communication around that, I think. But secondly, of course it won't be in ranked. King of the Hill is their most popular mode. They're not going to replace it with this. And with how similar it is to King of the Hill, there's no way they'd have them both be in ranked. It's just not going to happen. Let's shift now over to what is arguably the most exciting thing about the operation, and that's Escape from Kadar. This Horde event takes place on Reactor and has waves consisting of Sires and Locust hybrids, which are either using a Pipe or a Retro Lancer. Then the boss waves on 5 and 10 have Matriarchs that spawn in as well. So far, I've only played one match, and it was on casual difficulty. It seemed pretty cool, and it was nice to see some of the Locusts introduced. Oh, which, by the way, these are the only 2 Locusts, and they're not confirmed for Standard Horde yet. Maybe they'll come in, maybe for the mid-drop, but nothing is confirmed yet. Anyways, back to the mode. Even though I'm a filthy casual playing on beginner, I have a couple of notes about the mode. To start with, due to the limited enemy set and the fact that most are melee based, this may prove to be a pretty easy mode. If you have a few fences and sentries set up, it shouldn't be too bad. Not to mention that if you have a nicely upgraded gunner class with that, oh my god, you're just gonna melt people. The other note I have is on the map selection. Reactor seems pretty fitting, and I like the atmosphere. The only thing I would have liked to see changed is to have this instead be on a tile-based map. To start with, that would have added a new Horde map, which I think people would be very welcoming of, but more importantly, it would have been better themed to fit with the Escape from Kadar theme. With what they had to work with, I think this mode turned out really well, and I won't fault them for that. It's just something I thought was worth noting. So to sum up the quality of the content for this operation, maps, well, that's obviously a bust. Characters, I think they're actually fine so far, and I'll hit on more of those in a minute. The tour, basically exactly what we should have expected. Events, it's really nice to see something new. People just need to remember that these should be viewed as events and not the tour's selling points. Matchmaking, I would have liked to see some changes to the quick match playlist, but I really wasn't expecting too much. And for other stuff, well, I was kind of hoping for some new private match options and maybe an increased buy-in price for ranked matches. I know we're not getting anything substantial, but I figured those were pretty small asks. So for the operations quality, I guess it's kind of just meh. There's not much that has me super hyped, and besides maps, most of the things simply met expectations. But alrighty, let's cycle back to the quantity aspect. The phrasing that we've heard in the trailer, as well as some of the blog posts, is more content more often. Well, it certainly doesn't feel that way, does it? To be fair, we don't know what the mid-drop will have, and we don't really know what they consider content. They could be talking about marks and sprays for all we know. To put it nicely, let's just say that at this point their choice of wording seems a bit, let's say misleading? It certainly doesn't seem like much, but when broken down into a week-by-week basis, it's kind of surprising to see that this operation does seem to be somewhat reasonable. No, don't worry, I'm not going to defend the Coalition over releasing one ported map. More on that later, by the way, but there are a few stats that you should look at. Let's start with the Tour of Duty. I went through the tour on Monday before it reset, and this is what I'm seeing for Operation 5. Note that 3 of these weapon skins and 1 of the characters are from the metal groups. Now, let's compare that to what we have from Operation 6 so far. And again, note that 1 of these characters is from a metal group, and there's probably more stuff that's unannounced. Surprisingly, things seem pretty balanced. Well, other than the weapon skins, which again, we might get at some point later in the operation. If we then account for the fact that Operation 6 is planned to be 1 month shorter than Operation 5, then the whole more content more often thing doesn't seem that far-fetched, does it? I also took a look at the store, and I noted how much content was there, excluding the promotional stuff that is. We obviously can't compare it to Operation 6 yet, but what we can do is look at what is needed per week in order for Operation 6 to remain competitive. With that, we get the following. So again, that actually doesn't seem that unreasonable. Could TC actually be on track to deliver more content more quickly? It certainly seems that way, but there's one big piece of the puzzle that we're missing, and that's the maps. Operation 5 came out with 5 traditional maps, as well as 1 free-for-all map that many people forget about. Even if we're accounting for the shorter operation length, that means that we'd need to end this operation with about 4 traditional maps and maybe 1 free-for-all or 2v2 map. I mean, it's possible, but I kinda question how likely it is that a mid-drop will feature 3 traditional maps and a small map. There's not much to really say here other than either it happens or it doesn't. I'm kind of hopeful that we'll get 3 traditional maps in order to make up for the botched launch. Maybe Mercy plus 2 new maps? But again, I'm kind of riding the line between being hopefully optimistic and trying to be more of a realist here. For the sake of argument, let's assume that the Coalition is going the route of 1 to 2 maps every 5 to 6 weeks, or maybe averaging 3 maps per operation. Is that bad? Personally, I'd argue, no, that's just fine. In fact, I'd argue that the quantity of content that we're getting in Operation 6 is perfectly fine, and I hope they keep this up through September or October, if not the end of the year. But wait a minute. No, that can't be. This operation feels so lackluster. How could I possibly say that the amount of content is fine? Well, here's the thing. The issue isn't really with the amount of content that they're dropping, or I guess the content that they will be dropping going forward. The issue really comes down to the significant step change that we're seeing in the way the operations are handled. We're coming off a 4-month drought in maps, and they released 1 ported map? Yeah, that's an issue. I'm not going to defend the Coalition over that one. But the issue here is the step change. Hell, I think even if we got one port and one new map, people would still be upset because it's such a drastic change from what we're used to. I feel that going forward, getting 1 to 2 maps every 5 to 6 weeks is just fine. In fact, I think it will feel better than getting 5 maps 1 month and then not having another map for 4 months. I could be wrong here, but in my mind the issue isn't the rate at which we're getting stuff now, it's simply that the Coalition hasn't eased us into this new norm. So again, to be clear, I do feel this was a disappointing operation launch. I do feel it was a mistake to only have the one map, and a ported one at that, but I feel it's a one-time issue, hopefully. As long as I stick with 1 to 2 maps every 5 to 6 weeks, everything will play out just fine in the future. Oh, I guess I'll add that if the Coalition is sticking with the 2 drops per operation thing, I really hope they can switch things around here. Operation 6 seems to be backloaded in terms of maps, meaning that more maps are coming mid-drop rather than initial. At least, let's hope it's that way. Honestly, operations are kind of pointless at this point, but in terms of how things are received, I feel it's just going to go over better if it's front-loaded. I'm hoping that they don't continue this trend of having a lackluster initial launch and then making up for it mid-operation. People are more willing to accept a smaller mid-drop, I would imagine, because, well, that's what we're accustomed to. So where does this leave us? How do I feel about Operation 6? Well, I can tell you that I'm currently playing it, so I guess that's a step up, right? I mean, I gotta get that general rank in that Reyna skin, right? Once I reach general, I'll play occasionally if my friends are on, but overall, I'll probably be enjoying other games. I think that this change in operation timing and structure was the right move, or at least it's a move in the right direction. The release structure for the news left much to be desired, and the lack of maps is a big bummer, but that's probably the only true disappointment for me. Like, I wasn't expecting much, and we basically got exactly what I was expecting, besides a new map. And somehow, even though that's the only real downside to this content, I'm still extremely disappointed. You know that saying about having low expectations so that you're never disappointed and occasionally pleasantly surprised? Well, I guess it never really occurred to me until now that if you have low expectations and even those aren't met, it's going to be a pretty rough time. Okay, so I had my notes all done for this video and parts of it recorded, and then Tuesday morning I saw this. Yeah, this is bad. It can be read a few ways. We only have one map coming mid-drop, which, if this is the case, this will be a colossal failure. Or maybe it's we have one new map coming, and perhaps the "and more" contains additional maps. It could be read as, we have one new map coming. It could be, we have one map coming that's new for Gears 5, which means it could just be another Gears 4 port. Most of this doesn't sound too good, and after the backlash over the Operation 6 initial launch, I feel that they would have been a bit more meticulous with their wording choices. Because of that, I think the implication of this statement really is, there will be one map in Operation 6 mid-drop, but that map will be brand new. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but that's how I read it. On that sad note, I guess we'll wrap things up here. Anyways, what are your thoughts? Is the map really the only disappointment to you, or was there something else that you were looking for? Is there anyone who's actually happy with how this all played out? And I guess I'm kind of curious about how people feel about the characters and skins and stuff once you look at it all in the perspective of a per week thing. As usual, if you enjoyed this, please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more content, and as always, thanks for watching.